Alright, hello students. Welcome to the next part of our Working with Geometry series of videos. For the next part of the lab, the first thing that we do is create three simple 3D objects. I just ask you to have a sphere, a box, and a torus, or torus, however you want to say it. And there they are. Okay, so what we're going to do is we are going to make some changes to these three objects using the three most basic tools of transformation. That sounds really complicated, but it really isn't. If we look in the upper toolbar, we see there are three things here. One that looks like kind of like a crosshairs, that is the move tool. We have this circular arrow, that is the rotation tool, and this thing here, which is the scale tool. So by working with these three simple transform tools, we can adjust the location of an object, its orientation, and its size. So the first one that we are going to work with is the move tool. So we're going to click on that, and we notice that once we have the move tool selected, each time we click on one of our 3D objects, we see the gizmo appear. Each object, whatever object you have clicked on, is the one that the gizmo is going to show for. And we can see that we have our X, our Y, and our Z. Likewise, if we look at the bottom of the screen, we also have an area that has X, Y, and Z with numerical values after each one. We've talked about 3D space being just like it being a coordinate system, a system of coordinates, so the location of every shape in 3D space can be defined numerically by an X, Y, and Z value. So the first thing I ask you to do in the lab is to move the box to the origin. And we've talked at length about how the origin is the very center of our 3D world and that its coordinate is 0, 0, 0. So we could do this a number of ways. We could right-click in our top viewport and we could grab our gizmo and we can move that box as close we can and kind of eyeball it. That's one way to do it. But if we want to be actually precise about it, we can come down to the bottom of the screen and we can type in values of 0, 0, and 0 for our X, Y, and Z. And you probably noticed that as I typed those numbers in, our cube shifted a little bit. That was because we were telling the gizmo to move that object right to that origin point. Alright, so the next thing that I ask you to do is to align the sphere with the x-axis. So if we zoom in a tiny bit here in our top viewport, we can see that right now, the x-axis is this dark line here, that our object isn't exactly on that line. And once again, there are a few different ways to accomplish this, but if we're going to be consistent, we want to move our sphere this way, right? So we could click on the Y handle of the gizmo and drag down and eyeball it until the x-axis of the gizmo lines right up with that line, and that's decent. But if we look down here, we can see that we're not quite there. So let's put 0 in the Y, and let's take a look at for a moment why that is. No pun intended. So our x-axis is this one, the horizontal, and the y-axis is the vertical one. And you guys have probably learned about in math class that when you are lying on the x-axis, your y value must be 0. So that applies here. In order for our gizmo to be sitting on the x-axis, its y-coordinate must be 0. Okay. So the next thing that I have you do is to grab the torus and do the exact same thing. So we can go over, click on it, and set our y value to 0 and hit enter, and down it goes. So that's a quick and easy way to align some 3D objects along the x-axis. The last question I ask you is to explain why and how we can tell that all three of these objects are in fact aligned to the x-axis. And I'm going to let you think about that and come up with an answer on your own as I click between these three shapes and show you them with the gizmo activated. Okay, so in the next exercise we are going to explore the rotation tool and what that does. All right, see you in a minute.